There are moments in the chamber of the House of Commons where the political reality of a Prime Minister's position becomes visible not through what is said, but through the atmosphere that surrounds the saying of it, the energy on the benches, the timing of applause, the quality of silence where noise should be. This week's Prime Minister's Questions was one of those moments, and what it revealed about the current state of Keir Starmer's government is considerably more significant than any single exchange on the floor. Subscribe for more analysis. Here we don't sugarcoat, we expose what others are afraid to say. Starmer opens the session with a moment of deliberate lightness, congratulating Pep Guardiola on his tenure at Manchester City before pivoting to declare his interest as an Arsenal supporter and extending congratulations to the Gunners on winning the Premier League title for the first time in 22 years. It is warm, it is human. It is the kind of opening that is designed to generate a surge of energy from the Labour benches that carries a Prime Minister into the substantive exchanges with momentum and visible support. What it generates instead is subdued, dutiful, and conspicuously flat. That detail is not trivial. The atmosphere on the governing party's benches at PMQs functions as a political barometer, and when a Prime Minister's opening charm offensive lands without the responsive energy that normally accompanies it, the opposition reads that signal immediately. Kemi Badenoch reads it, and she enters the exchanges with a confidence that reflects exactly that reading. The dynamic that shapes this particular PMQ session is not Badenoch's preparation, not her policy research, not even her rhetorical sharpness. It is the context that Starmer carries into the chamber with him. Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary who resigned and publicly called on the Prime Minister to leave office, represents the right flank of the Parliamentary Labour Party. Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor who has officially confirmed his candidacy for the Makerfield by-election and whose presence in Westminster will, if he wins, generate an immediate and sustained leadership challenge, represents the left. A Prime Minister simultaneously exposed on both flanks, with the by-election result still weeks away and the question of his continuation already dominating political coverage, is not a Prime Minister who enters any weekly confrontation from a position of settled authority. Badenoch targets the pressure points precisely. She opens with fuel duty, a consumer-facing issue with direct reach into household budgets and a natural line of attack for an opposition seeking to frame the government as economically punishing ordinary people. It is a competent blow, but the exchange that follows on Russian oil sanctions carries considerably more political charge. The government's handling of sanctions on Russian oil becomes the fulcrum of the session's most heated exchanges, with Badenoch escalating the framing to its sharpest possible point, accusing Starmer of choosing to buy dirty Russian oil, of directing money toward the killing of Ukrainian soldiers, and asking directly whether he is ashamed.
Please support us on this.
Mr. Speaker, being patronising is not a substitute for understanding policy. And I've heard this tone. Mr. Speaker, I've heard this tone before. This is the same tone he used during the Mandelson scandal, and they were all cheering, and then it turned out that he was wrong. He says that other countries are doing this. The EU is not doing this. Let me make it clear. I know it hurts him to hear it. He is now choosing to buy dirty Russian oil. That money will be used to fund the killing of Ukrainian soldiers. Isn't he ashamed?
Starmer's response that the only beneficiaries of playing party politics on Russia and Ukraine are on Putin's side is substantively coherent. It is the kind of answer that holds up in a policy seminar, that demonstrates engagement with the actual complexity of energy supply chains and sanction structures, that a serious analyst would recognize as more considered than the binary framing Badenoch is deploying. But PMQs is not a policy seminar. It is a performance space governed by the drama of the moment, by crowd energy and rhetorical timing, and Badenoch's accusation lands in the room with a force that Starmer's response does not fully absorb. When she follows up by describing his tone as pompous and his understanding of policy as deficient, the Tory benches respond with a swell of support that underlines the directional flow of the session. The accusation of pomposity is a particular kind of political weapon. It attacks not just the argument, but the manner of the man making it, and it is most effective when it finds an audience already predisposed to receive it. Starmer's PMQs performances have genuinely improved over the course of his premiership. He is sharper, more fluid, more capable of landing counterattacks with comic timing than he was in his earlier months in the role. He demonstrates that range when he notes that in her self-assessment she has simultaneously won Eurovision and scored the winning FA Cup final goal, while declining to account for 14 years of Conservative governance.
Mr. Speaker, in relation to fuel duty, under the plans that we inherited, fuel duty was due to go up by 5% in April. We stopped that and they voted against it. We're now extending the freeze because of events in the Middle East. And I know the Leader of the Opposition likes to claim responsibility for things that have got literally nothing to do with her. In her mind, she won Eurovision on Saturday and scored the winning goal in the FA Cup final. But she's never takes any responsibility for what they did for 14 long years.
It is a competent riposte, well constructed and recognisably human. But it sails, as the sketch writers note, wide of the goal. The reasons it sails wide are instructive. Starmer is operating against Badenoch while simultaneously managing the atmospheric weight of internal Labour pressure that fills the chamber whether or not it is spoken aloud. The shadow of Burnham's impending by-election candidacy, the recent resignation and public attack from Streeting, and the broader question of whether Labour MPs are governing with full commitment or positioning for a transition, all of that context surrounds every word Starmer speaks, and Badenoch is too experienced a parliamentary operator not to exploit it. Her most strategically devastating contribution comes at the session's close, and it is devastating precisely because of what it does not do. It does not attack Starmer's record on the NHS, it does not challenge his economic credentials, it does not engage with any specific polity failure. Instead, it acknowledges what has become the dominant political narrative around his leadership and weaponizes it with deliberate precision. His own cabinet is fighting to replace him, she says, and the worst part is that they are not doing so because of his agenda. They actually support the agenda. They simply want a better salesman.
It's absolutely laughable, Mr. Speaker. It's absolutely laughable. Yesterday, we saw them huddled in the corridors talking about Andy Burnham and West Streeting. The fact is, he's got a cabinet fighting to replace him, and the worst part is, they aren't getting rid of him over his terrible agenda. No, they actually like it. They just want a better salesman. So isn't it the case, Mr. Speaker, that it doesn't matter who replaces him, the real problem is the Labour Party?
The implication is that the real problem is not Starmer himself, but the Labour Party and its governing programme, and that swapping the leader resolves nothing structural about what she presents as Labour's fundamental direction. This is sophisticated opposition. It is the kind of argument that is designed to operate on multiple levels simultaneously, as an attack on Starmer personally, as a preemptive deflation of the Burnham as solution narrative, and as a broader attempt to define Labour as an entity with problems that transcend any individual leader. Whether or not it is analytically accurate is a separate question from whether it is politically effective, and in the environment of this particular PMQ session, it lands with the authority of someone who has identified the correct pressure point and applied force to it at the correct moment. Starmer's government, despite the difficulties of the chamber session, is not without substantive ground to stand on. The announcement that the UK economy is growing at the fastest rate in the G7, combined with the largest fall in NHS waiting lists in 17 years and an inflation figure that comes in below expectations, represents a cluster of economic indicators that a government 18 months into its tenure would have every right to lead with. Starmer lists them, and the Labour benches finally find the energy that was absent at the session's opening, responding with the kind of noise that a governing party with genuine momentum produces. The problem is the sequencing. Those figures arrive midway through a session that Badenoch has already framed on her terms, and good economic data presented in a defensive posture carries less political force than the same data presented from a position of settled authority. That is the governing challenge Starmer now faces, and it extends well beyond any single PMQ session. The economic trajectory provides him with arguments. The political context around him complicates the delivery of those arguments. A Prime Minister managing the simultaneous pressure of a high-profile resignation, an incoming parliamentary challenger with majority support among party members, an opposition leader who has found her rhythm at the dispatch box, and a by-election that could functionally trigger a leadership contest is governing under conditions that require a level of stamina and political management that few modern British Prime Ministers have been tested on at this stage of a mandate. What the PMQ session ultimately reflects is the gap between the substantive record of a government that is, by certain measurable indicators, performing, and the political atmosphere of a governing party that has not yet resolved its own direction and leadership. That gap is not permanent. It can close if the economic indicators continue in their current direction, if the Makerfield by-election produces clarity rather than prolonged uncertainty, and if the governing programme accumulates enough visible results to shift the terms of political debate. But it can also widen, and the trajectory of the next several weeks will determine which direction it takes, not just for Starmer personally, but for the entire shape of British politics in the years that follow.